Welcome back. You're with Money, Money, Money. Hemant Rustagi of Wise Invest Advisors is our guide to tax planning this week and this financial year as well. So Hemant, we've discussed in theory the principles that should surround, when one sits down to plan their taxes. What about the instruments then? You said that, choose it depending on what your need is. But what about something like tax-free bonds? Okay, so they were very widely popular the last time that they were here. This time around, the interest rate cycle is heading lower. The expectation is that the coupon rate will not be so attractive. Would you still advise people to include these tax-free bonds as a part of their portfolio?
Well, here again depends on what your requirements are. First thing I think we all need to understand when we talk about tax-free bonds, there is no tax benefit for investing in them. Okay, what they do offer to you is that any income that you earn out of that is tax-free. So I think let's get that out of the way, that you're not getting any tax saving on investment. Obviously, the fact that if you're going to earn tax-free interest on that, it's a great plus, because the only competing product that you have is PPF. Okay, and PPF has an issue because you cannot invest beyond a certain amount, right? And it is not basically for generating income for you. So I think this has its own advantages. But I think many times I've seen investors getting tempted just because the fact that they are offering tax-free interest. Now, look at the last year, or previous year, a lot of money has gone into tax-free bond. Now, you are willing to lock in your money for 15 years, 20 years in an instrument where you're going to get guaranteed return. I mean, that's the only attraction for you. But the fact is that if your objective is to build corpus, build a corpus large enough for your retirement or some such goal, this is not going to be enough. I do agree that these bonds definitely have a place in the portfolio, especially for someone who wants to plan, let's say, after retirement. It's not an investment to build corpus for retirement, but if someone is retired, because unfortunately there are not many options today where you can generate regular income, and that too tax-free and that too guaranteed. So some part of the portfolio can go in there. They usually give you yearly interest, so you can plan it in such a way that you get yearly dividend interest and you can actually use that. So definitely these bonds have a place in the portfolio, but as you rightly said, you also need to look at what do they offer. The interest rates have come down, they're going to likely to go down further. By the time these bonds are issued, you need to, because they are going to be aligned to the 10-year GSEC paper. So you need to look at basically what kind of interest they offer and then look at it. Don't jump just blindly because it's offering tax-free interest.
Okay, so what about mutual funds then? They're one of the preferred vehicles. Within mutual funds, if I was to choose a tax-free mutual fund, would the returns be wildly different from a regular fund, and therefore do I have enough incentive to choose tax-free mutual funds?
Well, I think first thing we need to understand that, when you look at tax-saving instrument, there aren't too many options for you to invest in an asset class like equity. Okay, so first thing is that. So if you decide that you want to put money in equity, you have to look at something like equity-linked savings scheme. You also have recently, one of the fund has launched a retirement fund where you can actually put money. So there are very few options as far as the equity as an asset class is concerned. Now, in terms of return, now let's understand, ELSS have a lock-in of 3 years. The open-ended funds, obviously, they don't give you any tax benefit, but also you can exit any point of time. I don't think that's a major negative because you're not investing for 1 or 2 years. So that apart. Unfortunately, majority of the money in the ELSS comes at the fag end of the year. So the fund manager has an issue because he may get a lot of money when the markets are already
peaking out.
Okay, so it can impact the performance to some extent, but believe me, when you invest for the longer term, it doesn't make much of a difference. If you really have to compare ELSS performance today with, let's say, multi-cap funds, I don't think the performance will be any inferior compared to.
So basically the advantage or the money that I save by investing in an ELSS or a tax-saving fund, that is good enough to sort of cover any lower returns that fund may be generating? No,
I don't think it. It can happen in certain years, the 1 or 2 years that these funds may not perform. Okay, it could be again you can't really look at the category as a whole. You also have to look at funds within the category. You will always see variation in the top performing fund and the funds which have not done so well. So I think you need to be very, very careful in terms of selection of fund. That's one. Equity as an asset class tends to be volatile. We all know that. Okay, and as I mentioned, the problem is sometimes the fund manager may get money at the fag end of the year. It may impact the performance for a certain period. But I think over a longer period, I don't see that becoming a negative thing for these funds. So I think these funds definitely allow you to understand equity, because you get, as you rightly said, you get the tax benefit.
Fair enough. Okay, so just to wrap it up then, Hemant, you spoke about how tax planning should actually be a part of someone's overall portfolio planning or asset allocation. Within assets, if I'm using this time to review my assets, how do I rebalance it? What should an ideal portfolio allocation look like? And what is the kind of place that debt has? You know, in this environment that we're in, the interest rate scenario, what kind of place does debt have? I mean, is it attractive enough for, say, the longer term, for the next 10 or 15 years?
See, I think it's a very interesting question. Asset allocation is a function of what you want to do with your money. Okay, now you have some long-term goals, you have medium-term goals and short-term goals, right? So when we talk about asset allocation, generally, we say that, it depends on what stage of life you are. If you're in the accumulation stage, more money can go into equity. If you are nearing your retirement, obviously then, unfortunately what we see is most of the people then come completely out of equity and go into debt, which obviously is not the right way, because even after retirement, you still have to contend with inflation. So it depends on what stage of life you're in. So as far as the asset allocation is concerned, clearly depends on, what exactly you want to do with the money. But I think the important thing is rebalancing it. Now what happens is, suppose you're comfortable with 60% equity and 40% debt. Now, should you rebalance it across your portfolio is an issue. My view is, if you're investing for retirement, let's say you have another 20 years to go, there's no need for you to rebalance, because you still need to accumulate so much. If you're looking at a medium-term or short-term goal, or if you're nearing the retirement age, that's the time when you start rebalancing and, increase more to debt. Coming to the question of what is the importance of debt in the portfolio, I think it's very, very important. In debt, the issue is, what are the instruments available to you to make some good return from there? You have traditional options, you also have market-linked products. Okay. Now, the scenario that we are in right now, we've already seen the interest rate cut 50 basis point. Okay, even though in the recent policy, they put a pause to that.
Yeah, but they forced banks to cut it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I think going forward, if you look at the next 1 or 2 years, you're definitely going to see interest at lower levels than these. These are times where you can, change your portfolio to some extent. You can look at market-linked products like income funds. Yeah. I'm not saying that you invest aggressively in them. So if you have, let's say, 50 rupees allocated to your debt fund, maybe around 15-20 rupees can go into these kind of funds. That's what exactly I said. You need to keep an eye on what's happening for each asset class.
It's really a top-down approach. So first is decide that you need to do your tax planning at the start of the year, or your portfolio planning at the start of the year. Look at the asset classes and only then decide the allocation within the asset classes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, Hemant, on that note, thanks very much for joining in. And viewers, do remember, tax planning is called that for a reason. It involves a lot of planning. So I hope you're going to use this time to actually get started. Let's take another break. On that note, we'll be back in just a bit. On the other side is our tip of the week. Stay tuned.